How do you figure out the seed of the Minecraft world that a speedrunner rolled? Well, simply look at the end of the speedrun, where the runner typed the seed command in the chat, duh. But what if that never happened? That's exactly how my very first speedrun ended. I did my first Minecraft speedrun in the random seed glitchless category for version 1.16.1 nearly 2 years ago, and it took me around 2 hours to complete. Recently I watched the video of that speedrun again and got a feeling I could do that much better today. After all, it took me more time to finish the Bastion split, in which you trade with the piglins primarily for ender pearls, obsidian and string, than it took me to complete the whole speedrun from start to credits in my current personal best. So, I challenged myself to rerun my first seed with all the knowledge and skill I have today. I skimmed to the end of my recording to get the seed of the world, but then it struck me. I never tapped the command to show the seed. Oof. But maybe the world files were still present on my machine. I scanned through the files and footage I had left from my speedrun attempts, but no luck there either. The world files were long gone and the original recording was deleted too. I must have thought I wouldn't need those any longer since I had uploaded the run to YouTube. So I did what everyone does when having a problem. I googled how to find Minecraft seed without /seed. But all results that showed up required either access to the game or told me to ask the server owner. All of this was not helpful, since all I had was the video of the run which was performed locally on my PC. But maybe a search with a bit more technical terms could help the situation. With this, I found a subreddit that seemed to focus on seed finding, and checked the tools they linked. Starting with Sasa, meaning standalone seed searcher application. After playing around with that tool, I quickly realized that this tool is not focused on finding a specific seed, but rather a bunch of seeds that match some loose criteria one can then use to start a playthrough on it. The guide though mentioned another tool named QBiomes Viewer. At first glance, this looked very promising. One can set up precise conditions. For example, there must be a desert village within a 50 block radial distance to the world spawn, and it must be next to a forest biome. One can then view each possible seed that match those specific conditions using the integrated map. Oh, by the way, I've linked all the tools I used in this video in the description for you to check them out for yourself. With this powerful tool at hand, I grabbed myself a cup of tea and started watching through my 2-hour-long video to find every moment where I opened the in-game debug screen to note down some coordinates linked with some kind of information. For example, the location of the village I went to after leaving the spawn area. Or the biomes in which the bastion and the fortress generated in the nether dimension. After feeding QBiomes Viewer with this information and starting research, the estimated time to scan through all possible seeds was over a year. But how could that be? I was scanning around 70 million seeds per second. Well, that may sound like a lot, and it is, but in comparison to the total number of seeds possible, this is negligible. The reason for that is that Minecraft seeds are generated from a 64-bit signed integer, which means it can represent numbers from around -9 quintillion to its positive equivalent. That sums up to over 18 quintillion possible seeds. That's a 1 followed by 19 digits. This number is so astronomically huge that it's not really imaginable for us human beings. In comparison, 18 quintillion kilometers, or around 12 quintillion miles, is basically the distance between the Milky Way and our closest neighbor, the Andromeda Galaxy. Therefore, finding my seed this way was not feasible. Another way to narrow down possible seeds is to only do a so-called structure seed search. A structure seed is not the same as a world seed, but it's related to it in a special way. In Minecraft version 1.16, randomness for the structure generation is provided by a function that takes only the lower 48 bits of an input seed to generate numbers. This means that feeding the function with two different 64-bit long world seeds that share the same lower 48 bits would result in the same number on the first call of the function. But how did this even help? Well, this means that there are many worlds that have structures like villages or rune portals at the same geographical location. In this example, I took two random seeds that had the same lower 48 bits, then located a village in the first one, and teleport to the exact same location in the second one, just to be greeted by a village too. Since I knew lots of coordinates from the structures in my world, I would be able to narrow down the total amount of possible seeds a lot. Therefore, I tried a search for possible structure seeds, which reduced the estimated time of finding my specific seed to around 40 days. This process could have been sped up by using a cloud computing environment, but considering I didn't want to fork the whole program, I had to deal with the current performance. But still, waiting for over a month was just not fast enough for me. At this point, I was pretty close to giving up on the project. As a last-ditch effort, I contacted a friend who knows a lot about Minecraft speedrunning to ask him if he had another idea on how to solve my problem. He referred me to the Discord r/Minecraft seeds. Yes, the subreddit had a Discord the entire time. I know, right? After posting my question on the Discord, I got a quick answer from a guy named Nellis. We chatted a bit about what I had done so far, and he came up with a completely different approach. A tree cracker. A what? A tree cracker is a tool to find possible structure seeds by exploiting the fact that tree generation in Minecraft is purely based on the structure seed and is only pseudo-random. Meaning that it can be reverse engineered by knowing enough details about the trees in the world. All that is needed for that is the following. For each tree in a chunk, one needs to know its wood type, its coordinates, its height, and the state of its 12 corner leaves, with the latter 2 being optional. What the heck are corner leaves, you might ask? Okay, I'll explain. Oak and birch trees generate with 3 varying layers of leaves that can each have up to 4 corner leaf blocks present. The target blocks in this example are marking the corner leaf blocks of each layer. Okay, back to the project. The wood type was easy to figure out. There were only oak trees in the chunk I analyzed. The height though was a bit more complex, but since it was an optional parameter, I ignored it for the moment. The corner leaves were the first challenge. The quality of my recording was bad, and the YouTube compression didn't help either. I was able to figure out some obvious ones, the rest was just pixel soup. The biggest problem though were the coordinates of the tree trunks. This parameter is mandatory, and I had no idea how far away those trees were. After talking with Nellis again, he provided me with another mighty tool. The multi-frame perspective reverser, developed by Andrew. I know, what a fancy name. This tool enables one to find the coordinates of objects in a screenshot, with just a single known reference point, which in my case was the location where I spawned. Even though the name of the tool contains multi-frame in it, one can use it with just a single frame of the game. All the necessary information needed to configure the tool is shown on the debug screen, except for the field of view. But I knew back then I always played in 90 FOV, so I expected this to be the case here too. With a lot of trial and error, I was able to map out some grass blocks in front of me, and with those as even more reference points, I found the coordinates of these 4 tree trunks. So, back to the tree crackers. There are multiple tree crackers available, but I chose the one Nellis had released just 1 day prior to my search. The intention behind this fork is to streamline the process of configuring the cracker by requiring the user to just edit a single file. After briefly looking through the config file, I configured my 4 trees in a total of 9 corner leaf states spread between them and started the cracking process. The estimated time was around 3 days. I could have let this run, but maybe there was still potential for optimization, since the cracking time would decrease exponentially the more input data I could provide. Getting information of even 1 more tree would reduce the computing time down to hours instead of days. So I went back to my video to check for additional tree coordinates. Surely there were some I hadn't considered yet. What about this one? Yep, despite the tree being mostly pixel soup, its coordinates were pretty easy to find with the image reverser. This reduced the cracking duration to just 13 hours, which was short enough to let it run overnight. On the next day, I tested the structure seeds the cracker provided in QIM's Viewers seed generator. But no matter which word seeds I tested, there were always multiple trees that did not match with the trees I analyzed in my world. There must have been a mistake in my perspective reversing, but even after closer inspection, I was not able to find it. For the moment, I gave up on that chunk, since it didn't feel worthwhile. And I had found another chunk that I could try. The one I spawned in. And this time, I would do it better. Instead of just trying to get the coordinates of the trees, I would recreate the whole chunk, block by block, in a creative world with the data points I got from a new perspective reversing, so that I could directly compare the screenshot with what I think a recreation of it would look like. After lots of little adjustments here and there, the result looked really good, as you can see in this beautiful transition to my screenshot. This provided me with 2 birches, 2 oaks and a total of 8 known corner leaf states. Sadly, I couldn't use the 2 oaks in the background because I realized during the recreation that they were not in the same chunk. My initial assumption was that the cracking attempt on this chunk would take way longer than the last one, since I had one less tree available. But I was wrong. It only took 7 hours? But why? Well, there was a good reason for that, as I later found out. Birches have a slightly darker leaf color and are 3.6 times rarer than oak trees in a forest biome. This fact helps the cracking process in a big way. And I had even 2 of those in this chunk. Now I had around 900 structure seeds to work with, which can generate only around 60 million world seeds. I configured the structure seeds as input for a QBiomes viewer and let it generate the world seeds. But again, something felt wrong after joining some of those worlds manually. At the given coordinates, only some trees matched the ones from my speedrun, which in itself is not always a problem, since tree generation is non-deterministic, so lots of circumstances can result in a tree not generating the way it should have. For example, each tree has a bounding box and the game makes sure no other trees are generated within it by skipping trees that would collide with this box, possibly causing a different pattern of trees to form in the forest. This, coupled with the fact that trees can extend outside of their chunks, chances aren't low that another world from the same structure seed would look a little different. But the more seeds I checked, the more it felt like the patterns of my trees were just too random, which prompted me to go back to my video to check if there was any further information I could get from it. And in fact, there was. I realized that the birch tree one can see in the first few frames of my speedrun is also in the chunk, even though it is not in the frame I analyzed. With this new tree, the cracker went down to just 1 hour of calculating, but it didn't change anything about the result. The tested seeds still looked odd. I decided to take a break for now and get back to it later with a fresh mind. The next day I asked my friend Skytis to have a look at what I'd done so far. He has eagle eyes when it comes to spotting little details. Together we were able to figure out lots of new leaf states and even discovered yet another birch tree which had been hiding in plain sight all this time. Do you see these leaves in the top right of this image? We quickly realized that those cannot count from the birch tree on the first frame, since birch leaves cannot extend that far from its trunk. It had to be another tree. A new cracking attempt, now with 6 trees, took less than 5 minutes. But this time the result was different. Not a single structure seed could generate these trees, meaning something must have been wrong with either my world recreation or the configuration of the tree cracker. What a bummer. So once again Skytis went over every single tree location, type, height and corner leaf state I noted down in the configuration file to double check my work. And indeed, he found something. I accidentally misinterpreted 2 corner leaves from the oak tree on the far right as being placed, even though their state is unknown, because they got overwritten by the large oak tree. At this point I got kinda hyped that the next cracking attempt could be it. The next 5 minutes were an emotional roller coaster. Part 1 of 16, no possible structure seeds. Part 2 of 16, no possible structure seeds. Part 10 of 16, still no possible structure seeds. But then, part 11, 2 possible structure seeds. I got so excited, I nearly fell off my chair. The remaining parts didn't result in any possible structure seeds, which meant it was down to these 2 and thus less than 150,000 possible world seeds. I started a new world seed generation in QBiomes viewer and added everything I knew from my world as conditions. And suddenly there was only a single possible world seed. I instantly copied the seed number and created a world from it. At first glance, it looked a bit odd. But then I realized I didn't spawn at the exact same coordinates as in my first speedrun. After teleporting myself to the exact coordinates, it hit me like a truck. This is it! I did it! This is my seat! I was for real back again in the world of my very first speedrun. I really did it. Finally! A special thanks goes out to the following communities and people. The Discord r/Minecraft seats, for existing and helping goofballs like me find their seats. Nellas, for all his technical explanations, ideas, debugging help, and for letting me use his newly released fork of the tree cracker. And Skytus, for finding the incorrectly labeled corner leaves of that sneaky oak tree, for introducing me to the world of video editing and giving me the idea of making a YouTube video about the seed finding journey. And yes, after all this search, I reran the seed with the knowledge I have today. Of course, this was not a true RSG run, since I already knew lots of things about the seed. But I tried to stick as closely as possible to the way I would have run this seed if I hadn't known anything about it. Here are some key points of that run. If you want to watch the whole run, you can find it in the description along with the world seed itself. With this, I challenge you to beat my new time on the seed. I wish you a beautiful day and thanks for watching.